Hi guys, I'm
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I think it's internet is lagging a little bit.
right. So do go.
So
Well,
we're gonna go. Like I told you, we're gonna go straight into. Go ahead and give the people your story.
all right. So my name's Hunter Miskell. I'm gonna be 22 August 25th, and I was born with a rare birth defect that mostly happens in males. Um, I believe there was no found cases when I was born. At all. My mom couldn't find traces of it or anything. But I was born with a rare condition called prune belly syndrome, and what that is your abdominal, like your stomach has no structure because you were born without no abdominal wall or muscles, and it gets its name prune belly syndrome from your stomach actually mimicking a prune, like your stomach it looks like a prune. And with the 21 years I've been alive, almost 22, I've had over hundreds of surgeries, like for bladder reconstruction. I've had a spinal fusion where I have rods in my back because I was diagnosed with scoliosis. When I was first born, they broke my hips because of my spine, so that was a procedure in itself. I have a colostomy bag where I had that since I was born, and they retook that down, and I got super sick when they did that, so they had to put it back. So that was a big operation in itself. And I was born without a bladder. That's one of the main reasons why I got a kidney transplant. I've had two kidney transplants. I got my first one in 2012, but when I was younger, they built a bladder out of my small intestines, and I've always needed like higher authority of doctors, like high level doctors to like manage my cases and everything like that. So around 2010, I was told by my bladder doctor there wasn't much more she could do for me, my urologist, I should say, not my bladder doctor, but there wasn't much more she could do for me. And she referred me to Children's Memorial, which is now Ann and Robert H. Lurie's Children's Hospital of Chicago. And that's where I saw like my first kidney team ever, my nephrologist that I've had. And I found out I had 22% left in both kidneys, and one kidney was making up for like the other kidney, and it just wasn't doing good at all, or they weren't doing good at all. And so that was a mental process, like very mentally exhausting process in itself, with all the testings and then the doctors and then all that. So I pretty much needed a transplant when I went to that hospital. Like they started the process like a month later to get me on the transplant list. And in October 2012, I got my first transplant through them. And it was a pretty long battle with that one because I got it and it rejected right away because they said it had sleepy kidney syndrome, which is where they put your kidney in your body and like it doesn't wake up right away. So it rejected like a few days after I've had the surgery. I had the surgery. And so I was in the hospital for maybe a month, almost a month, fighting off rejection right after my transplant. And I had many more cases of rejection after that, which I was admitted for, whether it was getting IV steroids to manage the rejection or plasmapheresis, which is a type of dialysis where they put a tube in your neck and they filter your blood and your plasma and separate your plasma. And then they give you like fake plasma, as they put it. And so them would be long hospital stays. It would be like 2 to 3 weeks when I did those treatments because it had to be every other day. And at one point in time, I had to do both the steroid and the plasmapheresis, so they couldn't be done on the same day. So I had to do like the steroids like every other day for a week, and then the plasmapheresis every other day for like 2 weeks. So that was very rough on my body. And there's only so much you can do once you go into rejection. Like once you get in the higher levels of rejection, like or third or fourth time, there's not much more they can do after that. Like, that's when they start talking about doing either peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis, which I ended up going on in August of 2018. I decided to do that because my body was shutting down a week after I graduated high school. I was not feeling good, and I went and got labs done, and the doctors called me. They're like, your potassium's low, your bicarb's low, like everything is low, like your levels are not good. You need to get here now. And so I went there, they got everything fixed. Like all my levels stable. I got discharged, and then not even a month and a half later, I was back in the hospital. And this continued until after a week after my 19th birthday, where I was officially like admitted, couldn't leave because I was so sick and my body was shutting down. And they're like, you can either go home on your ejection meds plus 100 other pills, which it seemed like 100 pills. I'm sure it was about 50 pills, but it was a lot of medications they were sending me home on. And I like sat and thought to myself, I struggled taking pills in the past, which was not smart of me, but I did struggle with depression and stuff. And so I decided, like, oh, I'm not in the right state of mind. I'm not going to take these pills. And being the age of 13, you're like, what 13-year-old is like thinking, like, oh, I have to do this right now, right now, right now. But I want to be like, they're thinking of, oh, friends and going out and being like a teenager. So about at the end of August, I decided to go on hemodialysis because peritoneal is not an option. Because, like I said, I have no stomach muscles, so they wouldn't be able to place a tube in my abdomen at all. So I decided to do that, and that was a journey in itself. I had the HD catheter in my neck for about a year and a half. Um, I had a HD catheter in my neck for about a year and a half, which within the first month I was at the in-center clinic. They had to change it about 4 times because it decided not to work at all. And like they couldn't get drawback, nothing. So some were 4 more procedures that needed to be done. And then about the third time, the clinic doctor went to go put in a new tube. He discovered a clot in my heart that, from changing the tube so much because they weren't working, a small clot formed in my heart. And like we didn't know how long it's been there, where it started from, if it was from when I was doing plasmapheresis because I would get tubes put in then, or if it was from changing, like he thinks it's from changing the catheter so much, or from all the catheters I've had in my neck. And so I was life flighted back to Ann and Roberts, and there was, they said it wasn't too serious. I just needed to start blood thinners right away. So that was maybe a 2.5 week hospital stay to get my INR level under control and everything else. But there's no more clot in my heart since I got the tubes out. It went down with the blood thinners. It's pretty much non-existent. And then once they finally got a fistula set up in my arm for dialysis, they took the catheter out, which helped a lot with the clotting and stuff like that. And yeah, I did dialysis for about 2.5, 3 years. And, you know, it's very exhausting. And, you know, I barely had any energy when I got home, any time to myself because, you know, you do it 3 times a week for 3.5 hours. I was only 3 hours because they got my levels so stable so fast with dialysis. Like it was a kind of a bumpy road at the beginning, but like 2 years in, I started getting to go down on my time because my levels were just perfect being on dialysis. And yeah, so I did dialysis for like 3.5 years. No, 3 years. And that actually takes a lot on you mentally too because, you know, they change your schedule all the time. You don't know what time, like with some clinics, you don't know what time you're coming in. And because they switch you around so much. It's like I I officially got a time and I had to be there at like 5:15 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it's just exhausting to prepare yourself to like, oh, I have to get up and go get needles put in my arm, big needles put in my arm at this early in the morning, and hope to God I feel better afterwards so I can go and do something rather than sit home all day. But it was never. I had a good few days, but it was mostly bad days with my treatments because of how small I am and everything with my underlying conditions with my prune belly. Like my blood pressure bottomed out so many times. Like it would get so low so fast on treatment, and it was just terrible. My heart rate would skyrocket. It was absolutely exhausting on my body, definitely. And then after about 3 years of dialysis, I got a call June 30th that kidney was that that there was a possible like there was a new kidney like to be found, and it happened to be a deceased donor at Loyola Medical Center in Maywood, Illinois. They called me about 9 o'clock at night, and they're like, "We sadly a little boy has passed. We don't have much information other than he was young and he was a male. He's a perfect match for you. We did cross matches and everything, and like if you can get here tonight, the kidney is yours. So like I'm thinking like we gotta go like now, like let's go." So I'm calling everyone, and everyone's like, "What? Like you got a kidney?" Like they said it wouldn't happen this fast because you're such a rare match. Like it was like 1 out of 3 chances I would have found my perfect match, and it happened to be like a young boy, which is very, very sad. But I'm so grateful to get like I don't want to say a second chance, but more like a third chance to actually start my life again. And the night we got there, it was pretty laid back. Besides the nerves, my dad, my mom, and I went up while my brother stayed home with my grandparents and my sister. But we got up there, checked in, did like some testing, blood work, the works, and I went into surgery about 6 o'clock in the morning on July 1st of 2021, and with the nerves being so up high, they did like taking some come down because like I just couldn't handle it. Like just all the people and like your brain's just going and you're like, what is this? Like is this really happening? Like you just can't believe it. But I think they didn't say how long my surgery lasted, but I think it was around 4 or 5 hours. And I got out and I was just like I woke up in this immense pain, and it was just like they had to load me up on so much pain medication, and I didn't wake up for the first day and a half after my surgery because I was in so much pain, and they just had to keep going and going with the pain meds through my IVs. And it was just a bad experience the first couple of days. Like I did not want to get out of bed. I did not walk. Like even though it was supposed to help, I didn't walk. But I eventually got the nerve and I started moving more, and I didn't eat while I was in the hospital because my throat was so swollen from the tubing from the ventilation. I really didn't eat until I got home, but I ate like small things like butter noodles or jello, but I mostly drank water and to keep myself full because it just hurt too much to swallow and eat anything. And the doctor said the kidney took like right away, like there's no signs of rejection. They tested like my levels every day, and they're like your creatinine's trending down like super good, and we're hoping to get you out of here within like 3 or 4 days, which mine it happened in 4 days. Yeah, I got discharged July 5th, and then started the 2-week appointments. I went Monday and Thursday to clinic to get my blood drawn and see the kidney doctors or the transplant team. And then everything trended down, everything started becoming stable, more and more stable, I should say. Like they said, I was one of the fastest recoverers, and with the blood work and everything, they said it went or not the appointments. I mean, with the appointments, they've never seen someone move from 2 weeks or 2 times a week to a week, and now I'm going every 2 weeks with labs in between. And they're just surprised on how fast I did move, knowing my history with my medical stuff. I wasn't even supposed to be alive today. I was supposed to die at the age of 3. I wasn't supposed to make it past the age of 3 at all. The doctors kept giving my mom options. They told her not to go through with the pregnancy. They wanted to do all these tests because they knew there was something wrong with me when I was in her stomach, but she denied to do anything about it. She's like, I'm gonna have this baby either way, whether she doesn't make it or she makes it. It's in God's hands by now. And I'm here 21 years later, still stronger than ever, and it's life. And I, the transplant definitely has affected me a lot mentally. Like, there's postpartum depression and then there's post-surgery depression, which I didn't, I had it started a few hours after transplant, and I literally told my mom, I called her because I was in so much pain. I was like, I should have never answered the phone. I would be in this much pain if I didn't answer the phone. Which it was just my brain talking because I was in so much pain. I didn't know what else to say because that's how my body was telling me to feel and my brain. And then I came home and I had mental breakdowns every morning for the first 2 weeks because I just felt so. I know I wasn't alone, but my mind kept telling me I was alone because everyone was hounding me to be everyone any chance I got. They're like, oh, you got to do this, this, and this. Which yeah, I'll listen to the doctors about it and I'll listen to my mom about it and stuff like that. But to tell me every single time you got to be on top of stuff, I'm not a little kid anymore. I understand the consequences of what can happen if I'm a minute late on my injection meds, or if I don't do this or I don't take this antibiotic. I understand now. I've matured since I was 13, since I got my first transplant, and it's just crazy how not crazy. I don't know how to mention say it, but it's just weird how life works. But now that I'm a month and a half post, not even a month and a half, a month and a few weeks, a month and a week. I'm a month and a week post transplant, and hopefully I'm gonna start school soon. I'm gonna become a child life specialist, which is pretty much a child therapist in hospitals. They explain medical procedures and stuff like that. They go to children, the children, and explain to them oh, you're getting this done. This is what they do. This is how they're gonna do it. And I'm gonna major in psychology. I'm gonna take a 4-year psychology course, and it was one of my first career choices because it's something medical, and I've always wanted to be in the medical field because I just adored all the nurses who took care of me when I was younger, even up to now. I had some really cool nurses when I was in Loyola. They would sit and talk to me, and I just wanted to do that to bring kids joy, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do within the next couple of months after I get married in October. I'm gonna hopefully apply to colleges and start my 4-year course and get a bachelor's degree in child psychology or normal psychology, and get my child life specialist degree or certificate, and hopefully work at some city, like maybe like a, I don't know where I work, but I know that's what I want to do, and I know it's gonna help kids a lot, especially with my knowledge and how I partake medical stuff since I've been through it so much. And it's just a lot to take in at when you're a kid. So, having someone who understands what you're going through is, I think it's pretty cool. Well, amazing, not cool. And yeah, so that's my story. And yeah,
Do things at once and trying to be calm at the same time that way because I was having problems. Um, I'm gonna give you a second to kind of recoup and get yourself back together. So I'll go to a commercial first, then I'll come back and ask you the questions I have for you.
alrighty.
Welcome back to a second chance. So I'll get straight into these questions. I asked this question to a lot of people that I talked to that had to fight some kind of illness as a kid. I had to, I was diagnosed with kidney disease at the age of 4. Um, so
Mm,
my question, and if you said this earlier, forgive me. Like I said, I was having a horrible internet connections. I even went out a couple of times, but that's the reason why I like this platform. Even though I went out, it was still streaming and recording, so everybody heard what you said, what you had to say, which is more important. Um, so how, as a kid growing up with what you had to endure and fight, like how was I want to say a social life, but as a kid interacting with other kids and growing up, like how was that?
My mom tried to get me to do as much as I could handle as a kid. Like, she put me in public school, but I did have to have like nurse aides with me because I do use a catheter to pee and then with my colostomy bag. So, some of the kids did suspect like, oh, she has something wrong with her, especially in like once I hit high school, like everyone in my school knew, like, because I was always the sick kid. I was always, oh, Hunter's in the hospital again. We have to like save her homework or send her the notes or something like that. But I would say as a kid, I really didn't like choose to have any friends because I was too shy. So I mostly like was friends with family, like my cousins. I grew up with my cousins and then my sister, who's my best friend. Like I had that like friend group. So,
Yeah, that's actually kind of similar to mine. I was not the outgoing person when I was a kid, and definitely didn't want to talk about it. So I think like I said, my friends with my family as well. Uh, Grew up,
mhm,
going to my aunts all the time who's passed away already, and and my cousins and stuff like that. So like they knew because um, I got kidney failure from post strep, and so the funny but not funny thing about that is that my cousin who was actually born the a year and the day after I was um had strep throat the same time I did. And so he had to deal with something, but it was nowhere near as severe, me getting kidney
yeah,
failure. So
yeah,
um and I still don't understand where this comes from. I've yet to ask anybody also, but what he got from strep was it's one of his hands dried up real bad, and it was like consistent, all the time. Like he had to continuously put lotion on and stuff like that because it was so dry in his hands and cracked. That he needs that constant moisturizers and stuff like that in his
mhm,
hands. And I remember as a kid, once I found out that's what happened and that's how I got it, I used to ask myself like, what was the difference between myself getting it, and him getting it, you know, and but I think once I kind of got used to it and understood everything better, I stopped kind of questioning it. But
mhm,
um, so let me ask you this question because, like I said, I was fortunate enough to kind of you know go through growing up with kidney disease without having to have dialysis and things of that nature. So I didn't,
mhm,
wasn't like my line popped up here and there or whatever, and people had to ask me about it. So um, I was able to keep that stuff to myself, which is a
yeah,
little bit different from your situation where it's just kind of out there for people to see. There's no privacy when it comes to your life in that situation, which is definitely unfortunate because
mhm,
when you have to walk around like that, you would you know want to try to keep it as private as possible. Um, so with going through, and then knowing you're sick, did they approach you and ask you about it, or did they just kind of take their assumptions and just kind of go with it?
I think, like, the people who wanted to ask, like, tried to ask me, but I didn't feel comfortable, so I would go
Mm-hmm.
to a teacher and be like, "I don't know how to, like, approach them with this. Can you maybe help me explain it if I feel like explaining it?" I think I, explained it once in kindergarten, but, we didn't go to full extent what was wrong with me. We just said, "Oh, we she has stomach issues," like, we didn't say, like, "Oh, she uses a tube to pee," and stuff like, because 'cause we're kindergartners, we don't wanna freak them out. So, once I got older though, like, kids, I think, just kept the assumptions to themselves. So, I really didn't have to explain anything besides to new people that I've met, like, in a friend group with my cousins or something. So, and, like,
Okay.
going back to, like, with your cousin and how he got the dry hand and, like, you got the kidney failure, like, I don't even know how I got my disease, like, no one in my family has Prader-Willi syndrome at all. My parents, no one down my dad's side has it, no one down my mom's side has it. So it was all new to the doctors on how a female got Prader-Willi syndrome. Like my fiance has the same condition as me. Like he got the kidney transplant. He we have like the pretty much the same anatomy, you know, the same stomach issues, everything like that. So
Yeah,
like I so I
sorry, go
do
ahead.
have like a person to like connect to now that I found him.
Yeah, I know that has to make things just at least if nothing else a tad bit easier to be able to converse with somebody that knows exactly what you're going through. I've had this conversation plenty of times, and especially in the past
Mhm.
couple of weeks talking to people. But um, I grew up and I knew nobody, not one kid that had kidney failure, or anything like that, or any type of organ failure,
Yeah.
growing up. Even though I went to the doctor once a month, most of the people that was going in were like, a lot older than me, so it wasn't like I could kind of step to them and talk to them or anything like that. And from the time I got out at 4 years old till 16, I saw pretty much just for to the same doctor. I did switch doctors at one point because my original pediatric nephrologist retired. But what he did was he didn't just let anybody take me. He actually sent me to another doctor that was pretty much the same as him. They were best friends, went to school together and everything, worked together for years. So it was like going to a twin for me,
Yeah.
because it was all the same um, rules that he had when it came to meds and things like that, and how he worked and the type of person he was and the relationship he built uh, with his patient. And so when he retired from being a full time nephrologist and just kept an eye on his like his nephrology patients that at one point would need transplants and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So he would see us on certain days throughout the month or whatever. And so um that was about as close to somebody I'm able to talk to that knows what I'm going through.
Mhm.
Was pretty much my doctors, which was at that point was good enough for me. I had somebody to talk to. Like I said, I knew no kids growing up with it. I didn't know. I think the first kid that I met um, that had it was on the day I had my transplant. The young man that was getting the other kidney from the same person that I was getting mine from happened to come in at the same time I did for admission. And so I
Wow.
think that was probably the only person that, because I did PD the first time,
Mhm.
so I didn't have to go in center, so I didn't have the opportunity there to find, to meet somebody
Yeah.
in my age group, and so it took literally 12 years for me to find it because I had at 17 actually, but I went on dialysis at 16. I did peritoneal dialysis um, for 6 months, and then I'm a transplant at 17, 2007. So my next question is, when it comes to the diet situation, is peritoneal something that you had already planned and wanted to do, or was that just kind of like your first show when they asked you and they were like, no, you can't because of XYZ reason?
I couldn't do peritoneal because of my abdominal issue. They wouldn't
Right.
be able to place a tubing in me, so I had
Mm-hmm.
no choice but to go to the hemodialysis. So, I mean, at what point can you tell the doctors, like, "No, I don't wanna do that?" I mean, you really can't when it's a life or death situation.
Right.
So,
Right.
I just went with hemodialysis and hoped for the best, and it was a rough year and a half start, but it got to the point where it got bearable, you know? The arm surgery was not fun at all to get my fistula maturing at all, and getting stuck with needles at 5 o'clock in the morning was not a way to wake up either, but, it got bearable over time, and I'm just happy to finally have a transplant, and it still feels weird not waking up yet, like having to wake up to go. But I'm happy that chapter of my life is over and hopefully for good.
But definitely, hopefully for good. I halfway understand the situation. I definitely didn't want to get a fistula, and so
Yeah.
but then I had to deal with the consequences of not getting one because the 3 years I was in center, I like yourself had to have my port changed 4 times, but that was for clotting reasons. It didn't even
Mhm.
get a chance to get, because they were switching it, got to my heart like yours did, which is unfortunate as well. I also have some heart issues that I deal with, but um, they had to move it because of clotting because they couldn't give me heparin, which is stops
Mhm.
the blood clot and stuff in your line,
Yeah.
and so um, and that was a done deal for me from the beginning because I went on dialysis in August of 2010. By October of that same year, I ended up having a brain bleed caused from
Oh,
heparin,
wow.
and so
Wow.
the heparin thing was kind of a done deal, from the beginning. So, um, I had a lot of issues with it. It didn't, and the thing was, it wasn't like it caught it right away, or it was a bad clot right away where they couldn't, push the ceiling through it to break it or anything like that. I had a few of those situations, but it would like not like clot where they had to change it till, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later,
Mhm.
after changing it, and which means that by this time, my skin has healed around the stitching and stuff
Yeah.
like that from over time. So that was, I think, outside of the fact that they had to pull this line out my chest,
Yeah.
um, the worst part to me, honestly, was them trying to get the stitches out, and having to cut every now and again. I had to cut skin to get it from,
Oh, yeah,
around the
that
stitches.
yeah, that freaked me
So
out.
yeah, that was a not a fun situation, and um, it, it's unfortunate the roads that we have to go down to get to certain points in our life, especially people dealing with life threatening illnesses. And
Mhm.
I've mentioned this before. We a lot of us might have the same outcome of a transplant and things like that, but we go down different avenues and streets to get to where we are.
Yes,
None of our
exactly.
stories are exactly the same. We have some things here and there that may be similar, like you dealing with what's it called, plasmapheresis or pheresis.
Plasmapheresis. I
Right.
don't know what
So
it's something like that.
Tafaro, who's actually the other host that's on, he had to he had a trip that was pre-planned before he actually uh, started coming on and hosting with me and joining the show. But he had to go through that as well when he was dealing with his kidney failure. I want to say it was his second time around because he's a two-time transplant recipient, and so I believe that's he had to deal with it the second time. So um, and his story is awesome too. Um, and so that's why I always say that it's never the same story.
No,
We might
it's
end
not.
up with a transplant, or we end up with whatever things on the inside to it, but we've all had to go our different ways to get
Yeah.
to get, which makes these stories so wonderful. Because you can line up 10 people and you'll never get the same story.
No, you won't. You maybe get, "Oh, we take the same meds or, like, the same prescriptions, and we got a transplant," but that's it. It's never, "Oh, what we did to get here is the same exact way they got here."
Right. Yeah, it's always because unfortunately we have to deal with this illness. We have some similarities in some
Mhm.
situations, like Tafar and our other brother Edward. Both of them got sick. Found out they were sick. Doing routine physicals for ball.
Mhm.
Those certain, and story. Um, so we talked about basically how it came up as a kid, and so let's make the transition to, I guess you could say, kind of adolescence, being a teenager. Towards your age now. Um, did you see
Okay.
any change in who you were as a person?
Yes, definitely. Once I hit high school, I became more open about my prune belly syndrome and what was wrong with me. Cause like, I wanted to like live the full high school experience. Like, even at the beginning of high school, like freshman year, I was super sick with an intestinal block. So I missed my first 2 weeks of freshman year. So I was like, I gotta make up for it. So we might as well just go in, like explaining like why you were sick and like what's wrong with you. And eventually at the end towards the year I did like a Facebook video. My sister and my cousin helped me and I did like the flashcards instead of talking because I'm a terrible public speaker. And so I did the flashcards explaining like, oh, I have Primrose syndrome, this is what it is, blah 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 blah. And it got like over 5,000 views and over like 5,000 shares or something like that. And, once that video went out, everyone at school knew, and the questions started dying down of like, why did she go to the bathroom so much and stuff like that. So I really didn't have like much of a worry anymore at high school. Yeah, there were some kids that talked, but I just looked right past it. And now, like, I used to wear like baggy clothing when I was younger and stuff like that. Now I dress however I want because, my scars and my stomach define who I am now. So I just dress how I want and I really don't take in part what people say about me. Like they can say what they want. I know who I am now. I'm a fighter and I'm just gonna live the best life now and get my life on track.
You made that transition a lot earlier than I did. Because even in high school, I kept it to myself. Playing football while I was on dialysis, I kept it to myself. It's a team full of 60 something kids, and you would think at least half of them would notice that there's a cat in their stomach, but nobody even knew, because I kept it a secret. I didn't want to have to explain, all
Yeah.
this stuff. The people who knew were the people who needed to know, which were my coaches. And honestly, my teachers didn't even know. One of my head coach was my English teacher, so I don't even count him as known as a teacher. But
Yeah.
um, it's for me. It was what I realized early in life is that there are some kids that are just cruel, and it may not
Exactly.
be a personal decision for them to just do. It might just be how they grew up, what they saw growing
Mhm.
up, things of that nature, and so that's what they take on as a person, and that's who they are, which is understandable. But being a kid, even in high school, you got if I didn't have to deal with the bullying thing in high school, and I think that
Oh
was
yeah.
maybe because I did keep that to myself, because when they see a, 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 a area that they can target
Yeah.
to talk about you or get you to do certain things or whatever, they'll do it when
Exactly.
they're that type of person. So
Mhm.
um, it took me a while to start opening up um, about kidney failure, me being on dialysis, things like that. It took me till about 2016 was when I take that back. I did an interview for One Legacy in 2010, right, actually right before I got sick. I did an interview during the summer in Santa Monica with them. They rented a place out to do an interview with me for their videos and stuff like that. And and that was probably the first time I really like opened up and
Mhm.
talked about kidney failure, dialysis, and things like that. And I didn't do it, from that point on. And I think it was because I never saw the impact that it made. I think if I'd have known the impact that it made, I would have done it earlier
Yeah.
than 2016. But I didn't even find out that or whatever until probably about maybe about somebody posted it and they were watching it like posted on Facebook, and I'm like I completely forgot about it until that came up. And so
Mhm.
2016 I was while I was on peritoneal dialysis, I was still traveling and doing things. I was a part of an executive board and things like that for the California Teachers Association. So always meetings or conferences, and so I was always on a plane. Or I was always, gone, and so um, that I had to say something. I'm
Yeah.
around, the 5 or 6 people from my school that their teachers program consistently. If something happens, they need to know what to tell the paramedics, doctors,
Yeah.
or whoever. If something happens. So um, I remember I thought, well, I think that before that, a real good friend of mine, I kind of informed him everything, and the reason why I went to him was because he was in the process of becoming an elder. So I knew that he would understand it and be able to take it
Mhm.
in, a lot easier than other people who, don't kind of have that thought process to get it together and understand what I'm telling them. So when I told him, we just talked about it, and he asked me questions and things like that. And, for back, like I said, I realized, on flight people, at the minimum of twice, two weekends out a month. So, um, I finally told them my our advisor knew because she was one of my professors. But um, yeah, it was not that easy for me to make that transition until I did, and then I was able, you know, uh, the outcome of it, and knowing, okay, um, some people who can take, some people who can't, you just brush them off. So I'm gonna ask this question. You want to talk about this problem, but you meet your fiance.
How did I meet my fiance?
Yes.
We met through one of his friends. My cousin is friends with this girl, and she has a brother who was best friends with him. And he said to my fiance, he's like, "I got like the perfect girl for you. Like, she's literally you, but a female form." And he messaged me one day, and he's like, "I'm not weird or anything, but Tyler told me about you." And I'm like, "'Cause I know like two Tylers," and I was like, Tyler, okay." And so it just started from there, and we started dating like a month later, and then he proposed to me in June, and it was just like a fairy tale waiting to happen pretty much because I never thought I was gonna be getting married or finding someone who was gonna accept me for me, and it was just amazing, and we met at, like, the perfect timing, like, it was, like, destined to be.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. I think we all kind of deal with that when it comes to dealing with these issues that we have to deal with every day of our lives. Is finding somebody that can love you for you.
Mhm.
I think it's a little easier for people who may have already been in a relationship
Yeah.
before having to deal with it. Uh,
Mhm.
that time, hopefully, come, knowing that they love you and they don't necessarily care about the issues that you have to
Yeah.
take on every day. Sense of not a deal breaker. That's what I mean by not care. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely happy for you because I know I've had this conversation with a lot of people as well about being in,
Yeah.
in relationships and trying to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and it's like, why should this even be an issue for us?
Yeah,
Like you would think people would be able to accept people for who they are, regardless of their flaws and the baggage that they
background.
bring with
Yeah,
them. Right.
exactly.
But it's just I think that's just part of life. I guess. It's some people who don't even have with when it comes to relationships and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
but good. I'm definitely glad that you were able to find somebody that can accept you for who you are. Of course, I know it's easier for him because he does those same things, and he understands you, and what you have to go through,
Yes.
which is a big
Yes, he does.
part. So, this is my second to last question. Um, okay, so you did mention this, but I don't know if you kind of gave a full because I know you said that it basically a bigger percentage found in males than it is
Yes.
females. Do they kind of know how that happened, or are they still looking into it, or
They really like when I was in my mom's stomach, they did an ultrasound. They were like, your baby has something wrong with it. We don't think she's gonna survive, and if she does, it's not gonna be for very long. We would either suggest you do all these tests or terminate the pregnancy. My mom's like, no, like, no way at all am I doing that. Like, I'm gonna have this baby whether you like it or not. And like, they didn't really make a diagnosis until I was born. Like, they couldn't tell if I was male or female, which my mom knew right away I was a girl because with Prader-Willi syndrome, it's in male. Like, they thought I was a male at birth. But my mom's like, no, she's a girl, do a chromosome test. But to this day, they don't know um, why I got it, but it could be a gene that both of my parents carry. Like, they could carry the same gene. And then, like, that could cause it because that's what happened to my fiance. Like, his mom and his dad carried a gene similar, and then he ended up with Prader-Willi syndrome. And so I think, I don't know if that's my case, but it's still a mystery to this day, and I don't know if there are females out there now that are being discovered with it or what.
that's definitely unfortunate. You know, that gets it when it's probably not, not even a handful of other women out there with that same illness. Um, I we don't have the same illness, but I've nobody in my family had kidney disease. My grandmother dealt with it at the end, but it wasn't like something that she had.
Yeah, no one in my family's ever had kidney disease or anything like that, so
She
it's
kidney disease. So in today's show is what would you want here?
could you repeat that?
So what would you want the people that are watching, whether it's now or later, to take from
What I would want people to take from this is, like, no matter how many setbacks they have in life, something good always comes out of it. Like, like us, like we've been set back so many times with dialysis and stuff like that. We still pushed forward and we still managed our lives and like yes, bad things happen, but we get through them and we survive and whether it's a good day or a bad day, there's always gonna be good days that outweigh the bads and you just gotta keep pushing and keep yourself going no matter how hard it gets or what you're going through. It gets better and it's worth a fight to fight for your life. It's definitely worth it.
Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was issues with this internet, but so I definitely appreciate you coming. Probably one of the most more in depth stories. Since we started in March, and it's I sympathize because nobody should have to deal with things that people like to have to deal with, whether it's the whole issue or just part of it. Having to grow up, with bags and things like that. Like that.
Yeah.
I think that's something that can definitely mess up a kid's life because you don't know what kids encounter in school and
Yeah.
in the streets, things like that. So,
Mhm.
like I said earlier, some kids, this is how they grew up, but they, can turn out cruel and all they want to do
Yeah,
is bully
exactly.
and make fun of people. So,
Mhm.
I commend you on being able to grow up and come out the way that you did. It's a wonderful thing to see when um, people like yourselves are able to fight through time of having to grow up with these illnesses and and fight, like you said, fighting and pushing through and persevering. So
Yeah.
I definitely commend you on that. So again, congratulations on your engagement. I hope
Thank you.
everything goes well and you guys have many years of happiness. I'm definitely praying for you and him as well, health wise, and hope everything continuously. If it can get better, or if nothing else stays stable. So there's no
Yes,
more
definitely.
transplants and hospital stays and
Definitely.
things of that nature. So,
Yes.
um, Hunter, again, I appreciate you coming on.
I
We'll be back.
appreciate you letting me.
Oh, not a problem at all. Anytime, anytime. And so we'll be back next week, next Sunday, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And next week I'll have something shown. We did just start the Second Chance online store maybe about a week ago or so. So more information will be coming on that if you don't have me on Instagram. I mean not Instagram. Well, Instagram too, but Facebook. So um, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week. Hunter, have an awesome day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.